What's up, family? Welcome back to the Stop Sinking Show, where we go from struggle to flow together. Okay, so fair warning, this is going to be a touchy subject. But if you were easily offended or were closed-minded, you probably wouldn't be listening to me in the first place. So let's venture down the path of probably pissing you off slightly, but still bringing home the connecting to what hope you've held in this original perspective, that everything happens for a reason. I'm not trying to change your mind about this topic. I'm hoping to explore it with you so we can find an angle to apply this from. So it's the most positive and it's from the most productive place possible. Are you in for that? Let's go. So you've heard it before, and I'm sure you've used it before. Everything happens for a reason. It's sort of a mesmerizing belief to think that magically every bit of every little thing happening to you on a daily basis, all the coincidences or angels of serendipity that are constantly at work connecting the dots for you, that's something that's happening now to something that is meant for you in the future. It's this mesmerizing belief to think that this is all going on in the background. Oh, there's so much comfort in this thought. And I can understand why it's so alluring. And even as I'm nearing this topic with people, I can feel many start to take shorter breaths. Nervous, apprehensive that I may take away this precious belief from them. And then you might wake up tomorrow thinking everything is meaningless and all those connections do not exist. And then what do you do with that when all the difficulty mounts and all the stuff you go through on a daily basis just adds up? If you can't say to yourself it's all in the grand purpose of something, isn't that a diminished place to be? Isn't that worse off than having and holding on to this belief, no matter how foolish it is? Isn't this already a productive and positive belief to have? To just have faith that it is all in an end unfolding for you. Like they say, nothing is happening to you, but everything is happening for you. Again, what a comforting thought. So aren't we already at the most productive version of this thought? Doesn't it already give us all the strength we need to have all the serenity in the things we cannot change, and so on and so on? There's probably so many of these idioms that just roll off our tongue that we've just been societally, socially raised with. But let me tell you, the prevalence of this belief, the ease by which it comes to you, and how often it's passed down. How fast even the least woke person, when on the listening end of a friend going through some difficulty, how fast even the simplest of thinker can just say, in a way that they think is empathy and providing solace, as a reminder that, hey friend, don't worry. All this must be for a reason. So again, let me tell you, just the mere prevalence of this should be an indication to you that it is not the highest order and not the most productive of understandings. It is watered down wisdom. And unfortunately, again, as you sit there with your shallow breath, waiting to disagree with me, I'm just trying to remind you that it is unproductive to have this belief. I'm not trying to take it away from you, but that the ease with which we chalk off everything to this should tell you that it's less than an actual exercise of faith and more of a coping strategy. The frequency by which we indulge in this belief, I use the word indulge for a reason, indulge in this belief, without, again, the true meaning that I believe it is meant to have, and that I will get to, what I think that this phrase, this belief is supposed to mean. But the frequency by which we indulge in it, like we indulge in pleasures, I think this frequency and ease with which we reach for this belief to calm ourselves in times of chaos, it's more of our human selves' desperate need in those moments of chaos and tragedy to maintain control and to try to ease ourselves by anchoring a belief on faith to see us through, and that there must be some purpose to our hardship. We desperately, for the sake of our own mental health, need to hold on to such beliefs, because if not, if we are just suffering to suffer, and there is no divine end to it all, then what the hell, man? Let's just do all we can to minimize suffering, take no responsibility, indulge in all pleasures, look out for ourselves since no one else or no divine force is looking out for us. What's the point of it all? So again, my goal is not at all to toss out this belief as obsolete. I'm just here to point out that most of our interpretations of this, that everything happens for a reason, by way of its pervasive nature in our culture, our interpretations, most of our interpretations, are incomplete. It's not obsolete, it's incomplete. You can take a breath now, so we can discuss how you can still hold on to this belief that everything happens for a reason, but do it from a place of power. Because unlike what this common, past, watered down wisdom tells you, the job is not done at reaching for the faith to give you the strength in the moment so you can endure the suffering. And sure, I have not been denying the power that this belief possesses to allow us that comfort. But the job is not done once you reach for that comforting thought. It only begins from there. Let me tell you how you can take this belief that everything happens for a reason, and use it as the beginning of the recognition of your own divinity, instead of the outsourcing we tend to do with this sentence. I'm here to tell you that there is a next level to what this means that isn't readily thought about. But before I move on to the part where I tell you what to add to this belief to make it more durable, let me deal one last blow to those who were hoping I wouldn't say it. It will help us transition to my point. Are you ready? I know I told you you could breathe, but are you sitting down? Not everything happens for a reason. Sorry to tell you, my friend. Again, as much as I would love to believe that everything happens for a reason, there are at any given time 8 billion different realities and their clusters of realities. And as much as I believe the grace of God shines on all of us, judging from strictly a human perspective, who, while sitting in a comfortable room with an AC and ice in my cup on a hot summer night, who can only distantly empathize with the opposite ends of these 8 billion realities, is that not all those 8 billion realities can be as casually and easily justified as everything happens for a reason. Because if honestly you said that to me, I would think that you're a monster. What God would have people die in mass graves in wars? What is the grand reasoning to all the atrocities in history? Why do children suffer with illnesses? Why are some people in extreme poverty and not as comfortable as me while I'm privileged to be speaking to you and while you listen to me? Can you really just as easily chalk all this off to, dare I say it, cheap wisdom? If you can, then again, do you even have a heart, man? And that is why I believe the passed down version of this has become so trite that it is almost ineffective and a weak attempt at justifying existence as a disguised coping mechanism. And the reason I believe it's incomplete stems from a fundamental flaw in how we hold faith. Most of us think of faith as a passive activity. We think we have to have it. We have to have faith, not do it. Faith is something you do. Faith is an action verb. You move in faith. You don't wait in faith. You don't accept in faith. And this is the pivotal difference I want to point out and discuss further with you. I don't want you to abandon your belief that everything happens for a reason. I just want you to take it further and make sure that it was for a reason. And that, my friends, is the conclusion and the punchline. My job is done. Have a nice day. I'll be here all week. For those of you who would care for me to expand further, as I'm itching to do, of course, stay with me. This would be a good time to stop and ask you guys to share this show if I'm at least getting you to think about something, even if you don't think I'm right. Please share the show so we can continue this discussion and maybe you can teach me something if you disagree with me. Also, I would love for you to follow me on Instagram at ECKZX. Let's continue. You see, I don't believe personally that everything happens for a reason. I've reached for that comforting thought. But in having gone through some things that are unexplainable and not as easily chalked off to that, quite frankly, I am at times offended. As I'm sure you are by your casual listening friend when he advises you this same thing. It's like telling someone to cheer up when they are upset or calm down when they're mad. Like, thanks, bro. I didn't think of that. Oh, all this is happening for a reason, man. You mean all this bullshit I'm going through that clearly no one else probably cares about? Yeah, all for a reason, right? And you came to that conclusion so fast, huh? Your certainty in that will make me feel so much better now when I lay in my pile of shit at night. Thanks. Thanks, bro. Appreciate. Defaulting to this thinking and the promoting of faith in this way is almost insulting and not helpful. So don't do it to yourself either. Or at least don't stop there. Again, sorry to tell you, not everything happens for a reason. But it can. Let me explain. When something difficult happens in our life, no matter what it is, it will definitely help us to believe and think that, yes, it is all for some purpose. Trust me, as someone who plans out his life and for the majority of his life has been aggressive about going after everything that I've wanted, I don't say this lightly when I tell you that even with this self-direction, when I make my plans, I make God laugh with those plans. Because yes, he does have his own plans for me. And even in that sentence right there is just another example of how we build faith into justifying all the derailments in our life. So even with all this self-directed planner personality who tends to be aggressive with that, can still feel helpless to the forces greater than me that get in the way of those plans. I can definitely see and utilize in those difficult moments, in those derailments, how this belief can be useful so I can calm down my nervous system again and start to think clearly again. And this is where I tell you the work is meant to begin. Because despite the difficulty and the derailments that happen, and despite the momentary coping mechanism that might balance your mood in that moment, I'm sorry to tell you, as someone who has also lived and aged passively, relying on faith that the dots will connect at some point to make all that I've gone through worth it. Again, sorry to tell you, even though most of your plans will fail as they are meant to, still though, you are meant to keep planning and keep inching that needle towards the right direction each time. Because things do not just connect and prove themselves to have been for a reason. You have to make it so. Usually people fall in two camps. The larger camp is the one that justifies what has happened reactively. Again, in an attempt to feel in control and extend this everything happens for a reason belief into every aspect of our life, the larger camp, in their passive reactive mode, will let whatever it is that takes shape in their life, whatever happens, regardless if they directed it or directed towards it or not, regardless of anything, this larger camp of people will look for any indication to confirm their bias that yes, indeed, it does all connect, and yes, it does all make sense, and yes, it did all happen for a reason. And hey, if you can tell yourself this and believe it, and it keeps you in a peaceful state, then so be it. I'm not here to disturb your peace. But what I've seen more often than not is many people in this state tend to have a dissonance and don't fully believe that everything is indeed for a reason. Because they so desperately need to believe this mantra in a way to make sense of their life. And that makes them put undue pressure and press on their faith to produce the fruit or golden egg of peace in those moments, especially in those moments of chaos. And the longer you do this, the more and more pressure these dissonant people need to put and rely on putting into their faith, onto their faith, as a way to justify and live with whatever is happening in their life and whatever is unfolding. They need to put pressure on their faith so they can say it's all for a reason. In their desperate need to just cope, to just be in control and justify, and ultimately feel good that even in their bad lot that they are given, that they didn't direct always, their bad bag that they left holding, that there must be a reason. That there has to be a reason. How could there not be a reason? No way, I refuse to believe that. Tell me there's a reason, God. And this is how many of us live in this larger camp. And now for the smaller camp, the one I'm hoping to be a part of and inviting you to join me is the one that puts less pressure on having faith and more back on the acting in faith, acting with faith. And in this camp, they too also, in an attempt to feel in control and have faith, they too also believe that everything happens for a reason. And they too also reach for that belief in times of chaos. But they know that reason isn't guaranteed. It is not written. It is not makhtub. They know that everything that happens doesn't come built within it a reason for its being. It doesn't automatically have some grand connection to another dot in the future. Not automatically anyway. It is for us to make that be so. And so this camp works with their faith instead of putting increasing pressure on it over the years. This camp doesn't stop at thinking that everything automatically happens for a reason. They take it further and make everything have a reason. That means no matter what tragedy, difficulty, tribulations, they choose to triumph. They use the difficulty that prompts faith as a reminder to the call for action, not as a call for justification. And this is what I mean by how believing everything happens for a reason is an incomplete statement. How it's an incomplete belief. How it's a passive one. It would be more appropriate to say, everything can happen for a reason. It is up to you to make it so. And I say this in the most practical of ways, having gone through some of the most difficult of challenges throughout my life. Again, I acknowledge that it does no good. Actually, it might do harm to believe that everything is meaningless and pointless and that everything I've gone through is just for no reason. I don't want to regress to nihilism. I do believe that faith is an elevated vibration from that. But active faith is even higher. And that is what I'm reminding myself here. So yes, although it is more productive to think that everything happens for a reason, and it is at the least better than the alternative, which is dark, meaningless nihilism, I am inviting you and myself to take productive faith and make it proactive faith. Because you know what? Maybe all the things you're going through aren't for some grand reason inherently built in. Maybe there aren't some serendipity angels working to throw things in your direction and signs from the universe hoping to unlock doors for you. Maybe all the difficulty you're going through isn't all to some grand end. But it's your job to make sure that it is. For me, when I think of everything happens for a reason, I think about it from the most powerful of positions, with me in charge. Not some universal force that might send me another dot uncontrollably down the road that might connect. Sure, that might happen, and those should be bonuses. That might happen. But when I think of everything happens for a reason as a belief, I look at it like a responsibility to myself, to my faith. It's where I believe the work begins. If I really believed in my faith, I would do all I can to co-conspire with it and assist it and help it. So if it really did want for me to have this current tragedy actually mean something, if something out there really wanted that for me, then I am doing all I can to help that along. And that I'm helping and working with the forces of the universe to deliver that grand reason to me. And that is a proactive approach. It's not saying in the moment, oh, I'm in control because my faith gives me the solace to know that everything must be all for a reason. It's not just saying that in the moment and to stop at that momentary peace and solace. It's instead saying, I owe this momentary peace and solace that faith gives me to follow up on it with my own doing so that I can ensure I lean less and less and put less and less pressure on faith as my life drifts closer and closer to my idea of my life. And if I just left it on faith and then remained passive, then the only strategy I would have left in the uncontrollable, reactive, often tragic life is to seek peace outside of myself. And that is in this belief that it must be for a reason that hopefully the universe delivers to me. And I then put pressure on that universe. And God doesn't deserve all this pressure. The universe doesn't deserve all this pressure. He gave you free will. He gave many of us healthy minds and bodies. Your faith is a responsibility, a duty, not the outsourcing of your creation and peace. So, do you believe everything happens for a reason still? Good. I never wanted you to abandon that belief. But do you now at least see that the reason it is all happening for you is for you to create and connect, not for it to happen by itself? When something happens, it isn't automatically for a reason, but it becomes your assignment to make it so. It just becomes your assignment to make sure that when you tell this story, that you take everything that has happened and make it work for you to the extent where you can tell that story and say, I wouldn't be who I am today if it wasn't for those things. And that isn't by default, even though it is. We all end up being the result of whatever we've gone through. But it becomes our assignment to use whatever it is that comes along our path to add to that story towards the goals and who we are trying to be. So we can say, I am so glad to look in the mirror, and I'm so glad for all the things that have happened to me, because of what is reflecting back to me in the mirror is a product of what I made from all of that. That is our assignment. So even with the worst of it all in life, what's the alternative? Don't connect the dots? Just look back at your life like all the suffering was meaningless? Or just wait for the universe to hope that it connects the dots? Nah. It's for us to write that story differently, according to us, to make sure that it was all for some end. Because that is the best that we can do with what happens in our life. The greatest position of power is not to know that it's all happening for a reason and to sit there and just know that it's all happening for a reason. It's to know that everything is conspiring with you to help you make sure that it happened for a reason. That you have help when you go ahead and try to make sure of that. So there's work still yet to be done by you. Let's get to it. I love you, family. See you in the next show.